I'm going to try to show you something about the tip. And you've heard it said, or read it many times, that the secret to the reed is in the tip. And this is true. It is. And what I can say, the tip vibrates from the center to the sides and from the front to the back. And you need to remember that when you're scraping. Well, the stability of the reed is not really about the back of the reed or the sides of the tip. It's got to do more to do with the center. What I try to do first is to get the reed to crow. When you scrape the center, just be careful. Don't go gangbusters. But you can come from the heart lightly through the center and off the end of the tip. Because right now I'm just trying to get it to crow a certain way. And when you're scraping the end of the tip, you want to scrape off the end, but don't press, okay? Don't press hard here. Just kind of lift. Ooh, that does not look good, does it? And you really need to scrape off the end, you know? Otherwise, it won't vibrate. Now, it's almost crowing the way I like it to. And one side is a little longer than the other, so we'll have to fix that. Start a little bit further back here, I think. And it's okay if you go right down the middle. I mean, that's not a bad thing, because you will refine the tone. If you get in the habit of staying away from the middle, you have to remember that the gouge is heavier in the middle, so you do have to remove material. And so in order to get the reed to vibrate, you have to scrape down the middle of it. And then once you get it vibrating plentifully, then you can adjust the tone of the reed, the qualities of it. But first things first, and that is you want it to vibrate. And then when you get to the end, it's real important that you do scrape off the end of the reed. It's got to be thinner in the front, thinner of the tip. So you're scraping here and you're finishing by removing the material off the end of the reed. Now don't bear down, but just remove it. Now that crow is decent. It's got plenty of crow, and I think I'll help it a little bit by taking some bark off of the heart. See how I remove it here? And stay away from the middle in the heart. And don't remove too much too soon in the heart, otherwise your reed will be very short-lived. Now that's a nice, somewhat hollow, healthy crow. And that's the way I like it to start with. Right in here. Now let's see what we have here. You can see how it's tapered. What you want is a nice taper to it. More I've tried to keep the tip even, but tapered from the back to the front, as you can see. And this is how I like to start the reed. And then once it's got that healthy crow, hear how plentiful that is. That's how I like to start the reed. And then I'll clip it till it's a C. Maybe one more. Now that's a C, C sharp. So it's getting up there, but it's tapered mostly. So now I will re-scrape the tip to get it to have more of the rattle to it. I do like that rattle. Stay away from the middle of the heart. If you want your tip to vibrate, you gotta scrape right in here, all the way across. That'll get it to move. Now, in doing so, you'll notice a couple of things if you scrape the reed like this, is that the tip is going to be shorter, but will respond quicker. Long tips are really problematic. You don't want long tips. And also, remember to scrape off of the end. That material you remove has to come off of the end of the reed, and that's how you get the response, right? Otherwise the reed doesn't want to respond. So I'll see if it rattles a little bit, and then you'll notice the Okay, so that's better. Now it's responding. Crow's a little looser. Now you can remove from the back. Try to keep the knife flat when doing this. You know, a flat plane, if you will. Starting from the back, and it just so happens I'll stop it right at the heart, which creates a catch. Don't be too concerned with the catch. I think it's important because it keeps the reed vibrating toward the front, toward the tip, but you know, you don't have to get hung up over it. And also, sometimes I'll smoothen it out so that it can get more lows into the reed. No, I'm not doing too much except just removing the bark, but trying to keep the knife flat and on the reed. There's several ways, different ways you can do. Scrape it length like that, or when I start the back, I'll just move a little bit of time toward the front. As you can see, I get the material in and I push it forward. Some people can scrape just right through. What I do is, after I'm done removing the material, then I'll smoothen it out a little bit in the back. Yeah, because a smooth back helps. Smooth anything helps, actually, even the tip, especially when you want that audition quality reed. You know, the tip must be very, very smooth in order for it to be robust and healthy. Now, normally I would just let this sit overnight. One night will change the reed quite a bit. Now, this reed can be played, but make sure it crows a C. That's very important. I know I've said this a few times. It's got to crow a C. And it can't break. That C cannot break. Okay? What I mean by that is it can't drop. It's got to stay C. So it's very tippy. Now I'll try to refine it. I will try to scrape a little bit down the middle here, but it's the ends of the tip as it's talking to me right now. And you'll be surprised what a little can do. You know, when we scrape reeds, we tend to be afraid of the middle of the tip because of make the reed sound very thin. That's if you go too far, right? You don't want to go too far with it, but you do have to scrape the center of the tip in order for it to respond. And when you do this correctly, your reed will respond very well, and you'll be able to articulate much better because the tip is shorter and the time it takes to bounce back is not as much with a longer tip. Long tips are just problematic. They take too long to articulate, and they're unstable, and you just have to remember to remove the material off the end. So now I just went off camera a little bit so that I could work on the tip because I'm having difficulty working through the camera. It's very hard for me to see. I just tried to refine the tip a little bit, you know. So it's the center ultimately is a little heavier than the sides, but you need to make sure that the center of the tip vibrates before you remove a great deal of cane from the sides of the tip. In the reed, the tone is really determined by what you remove off of the sides here, you see. That determines the tone, or very little to do with the stability of the reed, okay? When you remove cane from the sides of the tip, that makes the tone a little darker, a little duller, warmer, and not so bright. And then, of course, if you remove from the ribs of the heart, too, that'll also change the tone, but be very careful when you remove cane from the heart because you can destroy a reed rather quickly. What I'm trying to stress about the tip, when you remove cane from the tip, you have to make sure that the center of the tip is vibrating freely before you remove cane from the sides. Now that doesn't mean you go crazy, but it does mean that you have a nice slope from the back of the tip to the front of the tip, and that the front of the tip is much thinner. And when you remove cane from the sides, that affects your tone quite a bit, and it darkens the tone. Now, I'll play it for you. I've clipped it. It's about a C. This reed is very easy to play. It responds really well. It doesn't sound its best right now because it's new and I need to refine it some more, which I'll do. And I'll just remove a little bit in this area, the blend. And scrape lightly, yeah? You want to be delicate about this when you get to this, when you get close. I have refined it a little bit off of camera because it's just too awkward through the lens. The tip especially, there has to be a really nice taper from here down through the end, and this has to be much thinner here. In order to get the reed to respond and to play and to have a nice tone and be stable, the sides of the tip are primarily for tone, right? And you work this area, in the blend, and over here. But at the same time, I find there is a direct relationship between the sides of the tip and the back, in this area in the back. And in order for you to have a nice balanced reed that has a very nice response and warm tone, it's important to work this area in relationship with this area back here. The tip is critical right in this area for the response, the stability of the reed. And it is utmost importance that in order for the reed to respond and to be stable and to play well, the center of the tip must be tapered from here to the end. The heart is the root and the strength of the reed, and if you remove too much from the heart, the reed will collapse. And the proportions are fairly decent. We've got the tip, meaning this area. The heart is twice the tip, and the back is twice the heart. Now I'll play the reed so you can hear what it sounds like. Right, so it also responds well in the sense that when you want to articulate, it'll move for you. So you can hear that, it has a decent tone and it responds well. And in order to get that response and that stability in the reed, it's very important that the tip be right. To help you remove some of the artifacts and the noise and the kind of the spit sounding in the reed, I tend to scrape the corners thinner. Another thing I was trying to show you was that in the profile here, this area is important to be concave. You can see how that slopes downward and not upward at all, but it has a nice tapered slope to it. And that's real important to the way the reed responds also. So keep that in mind when you're working on the tip. Remember, you can buy reeds from me at pierreroyoboe.com. And I also do a Skype and scrape, which is very helpful to some players that we do one-on-one. It does work quite nicely. Okay, good luck to you.